Hey everybody, welcome. We've got a good show for you today. We've got the Cutup. I'm your co-host Zain and I've got Steve with me. Steve, what's up, brother?
What's up, man? I am excited for today. Watching through this film, it just got me geeked because it's fun just watching good, versatile football. And the Rams are doing just that. They're nuts. Stafford's insane, and it's just an absolute treat to watch. So I can't wait to get into this today.
You know, it's interesting. Not every day you get to cover a good football team, and this is potentially the best that we have in the NFL this year. So it is really fun to make sure that we're going through the process, and we've covered the Cowboys and the Lions and other teams in the past, the Bucks, teams that are kind of like fringy playoffs, like interesting, but have a ton of issues types of teams. And this time we get to cover the best team, a team that has MVP candidate number one, Matthew Stafford, one of the most interesting wide receivers in the world, and Puka Nacua, the coach that makes everybody's head spin in Sean McVay. And we're going to talk about their entire offense, their scheme, the way that they design plays, and the individual players themselves. But it's a fun one to cover, but just because we haven't had the opportunity to cover something that's so good.
Yeah, and again, it's just the versatility. I mean, I think Stafford's I feels like every year he kind of takes a step to the next level. And then now you've got McVay, who is leveling up his own game in the sense of the run game, the formational versatility, the way he's using guys. It's just the stable of weapons they have are so much fun and just used in so many different ways.
Yeah, and before we get going into that, I want everyone to make sure they're liking, subscribing, and watching all of our content. We did 4 previous ones. We've got the Cowboys, we've got the Bucks, the Lions, and so there's opportunity to go back and listen to all of those. I think they're all still relevant today, especially if you're in your fantasy semifinals. You can learn a little bit more about what we think about the individual players on those teams, the schemes, the offense designs, everything like that. And if you haven't already, make sure that you're following us on Twitter. You see our Twitter handles here. For those that are listening, it's at callmesteve07 and at Denani Zane. Thanks for listening, and we're going to get going for the rest of the show after this. All right, Steve, before the break, we were talking about how excited we are about this offense. I think we both see a lot of unique qualities and traits with the team. McVay is in his bag all the time. Um, there's been a rising trend of people talking about what they do in 13 personnel, the motion that they do, receivers running routes, basically just running through the offensive line. There's a lot of fun stuff to talk about with the uniqueness and the schematics here. Where do you want to start?
That's a great question because I feel like you could start anywhere and everywhere. But really, I think that the main point around this all is just that you've got a guy at quarterback who is just driving this, called a supercar at this point. So like the highest level that you possibly can. And that's just emphasized with the stable of weapons he has, the running backs, the tight ends, and just like the formational versatility that they're able to get into. But a lot of it really is just pre and post Stafford figuring out where to go with the ball and knowing that his guy, that 9 times out of 10, his guys are going to win. And so, I mean, it's simple as like against Seattle in the first matchup, we kind of talked about the formational versatility, like you said. And last week against the Lions, they went super heavy 12, 13 personnel. I think they had 24 dropbacks out of 12 and 13 personnel. And really,
Yeah,
what
and we
go
kind of
ahead.
know that the Lions are the type of team that just kind of stays in their standard package all the time.
Yes. Yeah, the Lions love to match heavy personnel with their base package, which the Lions have built their defense that way to, they love their linebackers, Anzalone, Jack Campbell, Derek Barnes. They think they have versatility and the ability to run with guys there. On the flip side, this week the Rams play Seattle. Seattle doesn't do that. Seattle is a nickel all the time, pretty much. And the reason behind that is that they have Nick Emenwari, who basically plays as a linebacker. And so they're more often than not, they're in, nickel for, four down linemen, two linebackers, and then your five DBs. A lot of times they'll do this like we have here, where they'll walk down a linebacker and they'll get into a 5-man front, into like a 5-1. And really it just comes down to what Stafford sees. And so what Stafford is doing 9 times out of 10 is nothing more than trying to manipulate and create one-on-one matchups, whether it's in zone or whether he gets that matchup in man-to-man. And so like this first play here, it's a pretty simple, he sees, you're going single high. They've got majority of the defense is shaded toward Davante Adams on the top, at the top of the screen. And he sees the safeties, moving down kind of into that like hook to curl, seam area, which creates a one-on-one matchup for Puka. So what does he do? He gives eyes to the two receiver side over here, Whittington and Adams, which then, pulls the safety down into the middle. He sees Witherspoon's going to run with this releasing tight end. He has a one-on-one matchup with Puka. Puka's going to win the route 9 times out of 10. Boom, easy completion.
And the funny thing is, you talked about him giving eyes, and it's just hilarious because his eyes are never where he's actually throwing the ball.
Yeah, and that's that is a preview of what we're going to get to, because I have like 6 clips of him no look passing, or virtually no look. It's close to, but he's the one guy in the NFL that you just can't trust his eyes, and it's it's a no-win situation. Now Seattle this week, they have really good cover corners, so that changes things a bit and it makes things more difficult. That's why Stafford didn't have that good of a game against them the first time around, is that they just have good tight coverage. But
in more discipline, and I would just want to add that I believe they're more disciplined in staying within their zones and not getting caught reading eyes. I mean, players still individually do that from time to time, but in certain situations, some defenses are better about just sticking to what their assigned area is, or the man within their area, or what have you too.
Yeah, and so what they'll also do is they'll play into aggressiveness of teams. And so what they did against Seattle is they like to get into their screen game a little bit. So now you've got a blitz look up front. Stafford sees, Stafford has him coming. He has 3 guys over 3 on the trip side, safety shaded toward Davante Adams. So now you have one-on-one matchups outside. They know Seattle's coming super aggressive, so they just flip a screen to Puka and let it go. I mean, just the way that I think McVay and Stafford are able to play into what defenses give them and what defenses show them. And they'll also do a bunch of like funky formational stuff where you get into what is a 21 personnel, but your fullback is Whittington, and you've got your stack of Puka and Davante Adams. And then you've got Parkinson on the backside as the tight end, and you motion Puka. And now what they do a lot is they love to do, and I'll get to that clip in a second, but like what they love to do is they like to insert Puka in between the tackle and the tight end and have him run routes from there. And so what you get now is, well, now we keep him into block. And now you have Adams running single route. You've got them dropping into what looks like a cover 3. Safety's going to stay shaded towards Adams. The linebacker is also kind of flying out back because the Rams hit those in breakers so often. So he wants to get depth because you can't leave that zone open just in case he does run an in breaking route, which then just creates depth for everyone. You get your guy flying out to the flat. You get all the second level guys are all sitting pretty deep to make sure that, in breaker doesn't come in. And now you get Jordan Whittington as a fullback release into a wide open zone. And he gets,
and that plays into his game too, where he's more of a like yak type player. I feel like the way that they like to do their personnel is have like clones of the type of players that they already have. And like Puka is kind of going to be more of like a Cup, and then Cup kind of got hurt, and he was able to basically replace him.
Yeah,
and maybe even more than that now. And now they have Davante, and Whittington's kind of like the he's a very junior version of Puka, obviously, and so getting him into space, taking him from the backfield, he would be kind of the way that they insert Puka into the running game with blocks and stuff, and then him running through the line of scrimmage. It's the same way that they like to use a guy like Whittington. So Whittington lining up at fullback in that situation, it's not like he would be the best fullback ever, but he's a decent enough blocker and willing to take on that contact to where in that situation, that formation, he releases into the flat and he's just kind of open and he's gonna generate some yak opportunities for himself in that situation.
Yeah, and he's a kind of a bully ball player. He's, I mean, he's not huge, but he's a pretty thick guy, and the Rams like to use him like attached to the line. They like to use him in a lot of different areas because of his run blocking ability. And that just feeds into just, how you like they keep defenses on their toes. And so this is against the Bucks, but then like I said, what they like to do is they'll motion Puka over and then boom, they insert him through the line. And you get one-on-one opportunity because Stafford sees that he's going to get pretty much man coverage with Parrish coming over. And
it's so underrated. Like, think about this. If you start the clip from the beginning again, like Puka is running basically full speed one direction. And then at the time of the snap, he starts running vertically and then to the opposite direction. So this safety or corner or whoever it is, number 25, is running one direction to kind of he's getting off balance going one direction. Puka knows where he's going and he starts going the opposite direction. That guy's clearly staying with him because it's man coverage. In this situation, like, you're just going to lose.
Yeah,
it's a designed loss for the corner.
And your tendency is that, like, when a receiver motions across like that, you're most likely anticipating that he's going to stay outside. He's going to work outside to the left. So you can see it that the corner gets out wide. And, because the play action, because they marry that with their run game, they do that in the run game often. You get the linebackers pulled up. You get a one-on-one situation on the outside of Davante Adams taking a guy deep, and all of a sudden it creates this massive hole where there's no one in the flat area, no one in the in that like deep third area, and it just creates a wide open opportunity for Puka. And
if you go back to that clip, the only thing that I was thinking with that is, and we don't know this as analysts of the game, but when Puka's running that route, can you just pause it as he's going vertically without him cutting in? Yep, right there. So the receiver on the bottom part of the screen is also kind of doing like a more vertically inclined route. And then Puka, it's very possible that Puka has the option based off of what he sees with that corner. If he's inside leverage, that he could go out. If he's outside leverage, he can go in.
Right.
And I mean, I would not put it past the Rams to build it in that way, because the way that the routes are designed there's not another player that's going to be in that zone on this play. So it's just kind of interesting to think about. Like, I'm very curious what would have happened if that corner was staying inside leverage on Puka, if he would have cut out, and that would just be like Stafford, hey, just watch Puka. If Puka goes this way, then he's good there. If he goes the opposite way, he gets to determine which direction he wants to go.
Yeah, and I think that's what I want to say. I saw someone talking about it, but I think that's what the Rams do really well, is that they give Stafford and they give their receivers a lot of freedom of choice. It's not like, they have their base of like what the play is supposed to look like, but I think a lot of it is, it is their job to read the defense. It influenced the defense the way they think they can. And so I think they do get a lot of options of inside outside releases. And it kind of is just a game of, where do I have leverage? Because that's what you see so often, is that Puka and Davante Adams are so good at working leverage. They understand where the defense is. They understand where the guy that is covering is, and where the help is or isn't. And they just work off of that so well. And again, you can just continue to get into like different formational versatility. Here, you get a red zone look. You have Puka, right? As a fullback, that immediately keys to the defense. It was kind of similar to the Whittington thing, where like, you put a receiver in the backfield, but now it's Puka. So that like puts the defense on high alert. And this is going to be a run play, but I think it just shows what they can do with things is that you get Puka out to the flat. And I mean, just look at like the pull the gravitational pull that he has as a player, as a receiver, and the way the Rams get into different boot action. And it just, the entire second level of the defense is gone. And so it's not just the pass game. It's just so many different ways that they're able to get to different formations and use a lot of Puka and his movement across the formation and in the formation in general to just influence where they want to get a hole in the defense.
It's so interesting because if he was lined up out wide on that play, would you still have the pull from all the linebackers? I don't think that would necessarily be the case. Like if he was lined out wide, the corner would be on him and they would just maybe play man coverage. Maybe a linebacker would stretch out a little bit, but the assignments would look a little bit different, I think.
Yeah. And so and what the Rams have done is that they've kind of swapped in between. What they like to do is they'll do that super heavy personnel. They'll go 13, 12. They'll get into like a tight 11, which kind of looks like, it might be Whittington and things, but it kind of looks like a 12. But then Stafford also likes to get into 5 wide. And so that's where you just kind of give Stafford the opportunity to pick and choose where he wants to go. And it's just find the matchup you like and work it. And so again, with the amount of guys that they have, you've got a mismatch of Terrence, I'll set it up here. You've got Davante Adams up top. You have Terrence Ferguson in the slot. You've got Xavier Smith here in the slot. You have Corum in the slot here, and then you have Puka down below. You can see the safety kind of shades a little bit towards Puka just because he has that pull, and you've got 4 guys over the top of these 3 receivers. And then it's just really Stafford picking his matchups. And this is an incompletion to Davante Adams, but it just showed they can do both getting into tight formations, but then they can also spread you out wide and work it there. And they'll, that's where they will work 5 wide, and they'll try to do like Puka quick game here is just, hey, man-on-man cover, one-on-one coverage, just go win it short. They like to do that with Puka a lot of just quick slants. He's a big body. He's not afraid to get in there. He catches almost everything, it seems like. And, just letting Stafford go quick. And again, you can kind of see where his eyes go. He sets up where he wants to throw every time. He will move the defense. He will move the safeties, and he'll quick glance to the left and then flip back right. This D lineman drops out. That kind of pulled him a little bit to the right. And then now they do drop into zone coverage a little bit, it looks like. And then, Puka wins underneath and boom, makes the catch and goes. And so just.
What is the best way to actually play them then from a defensive perspective? I'm just kind of sitting here okay, we've seen some man clips, we've seen some zone clips, and Stafford's just dealing in both situations. I think it has to be a really good defense that mixes things up.
Yeah, and it's really, you have to have correctly aggressive corners. And you can see against Seattle here, again, what Stafford does is he's looking to create one-on-one matchups. Seattle likes to do a lot of the kind of man match stuff. They'll drop into a cover 3 and they'll, it'll be zone, but they'll kind of man match. And so here, again, you get it. They get into a 10 personnel kind of 11 because they have Parkinson here down at the bottom. And it's just that he motions in. And then again, it just comes down to Stafford moving the defense the way he wants to go. So again, he flips his hips and kind of looks towards Davante Adams. That pulls the linebacker out that way. And that also pulls into the other side linebacker into, a little bit into the middle as well. He sees that the safety is flying out with the tight end, and then you have a one-on-one matchup with Puka. And this is what needs to happen, is that you have to have good corners who can cover and play aggressively and fight through hands. because they're like Davante Adams and Puka Nacua are so good at catching with their hands. Like not often do they let the ball get into their body a ton
Right.
unless they feel that they have a ton of space. Really, they're really good at attacking the ball, and so you do have to have a corner or multiple corners that can, kind of play aggressive and attack downhill and read well. That's what Job does here. And he gets Puka, but you can just see how Stafford's able to so well manipulate the defense into giving him the one-on-one matchup that he wants. And that is really what I think is the biggest driver of this offense, is that Stafford just is playing at an all-time level. And then what they also like to do is they like to work these boots a lot. Stafford likes to, they like to get into a heavier personnel, work off of their run game, kind of show either a man duo or sometimes outside zone. And then they work boot off of that. And that's where these tight ends come into play, is that.
Yeah, there's been a rise of everybody talking about how many tight ends that they put on the field, whether they're 12 or 13 personnel, either in run game or pass game. And we've seen some of the metrics, not just with the Seahawks. The Seahawks were notorious earlier in the season for passing out of 13, but the Rams have been doing it a ton this year. So it's very interesting how they use the run game in that facet and then use play action and boot off of it to be able to unlock different things out of these heavier personnels as well.
Yeah, and what they have is they have a guy like Terrence Ferguson who they can go into 13 personnel, but they can split out Ferguson out wide because he can match up against the corner decently well. He's not the greatest separator, but hey, he's 6'5", he's a big dude. And so that, creates opportunities for blocking because he's able to get, in the run game, he's able to get up to the second level and block and wall off a lot of safeties and corners. But then they also throw a lot of eye candy, a lot of motion. And so you get the defense flowing to the right, Stafford boots back, and then, because of all that chaos, because of this tight formation here, it kind of washes people out. And you can see that the defender that's supposed to run with Parkinson Parkinson does a good job of pushing him off. And then he gets kind of caught in the wash, and it creates a wide open opportunity for Parkinson. And Stafford, with his ability to change the arm angles and everything, you can be as aggressive as you want upfield, but he's going to find a way to get the ball around you.
And that was their notorious 13 personnel pass package. But it's funny because without Davante in, who usually plays in that like ISO single wide receiver kind of like situation, they had to go with Kanata Mumfield,
right?
Which good for them. They feel like he's really good. And there were quotes this week about McVay saying like, hey, he's like our mini Davante. And I don't know how I feel about that right now, but good for them for feeling like he can live up to it.
He's a sneaky good separator. He hasn't got a ton of opportunities just because of what they've done with their positions, but I'm excited to see what he can do this week because I've seen a couple times on film where he can really separate and get room on receivers, which is what, Stafford in this offense is predicated on, is that it's, like I said, creating one-on-one opportunities and then Stafford knowing or believing that his guys are going to win. But then again, it's also Stafford just understanding where defense is flowing. And so again, you get that 13 personnel. They fake the outside zone. You get the defense flowing towards that outside zone. He sees Barnes kind of, funnels inside a little bit. That boom. Now he knows that he has a one-on-one opportunity. He has a one-on-one opportunity in the sense that he's going wherever this corner doesn't go. And so he sees the corner drop out a little bit, get it just enough depth to pull him off of Whittington, and he's able to quick flip it underneath to Parkinson again. And Parkinson works to a first down. McVay and Stafford are just so much in their bag this year, and they've got a stable of weapons. And Parkinson, who's good at working underneath, he's good at working drag routes, things like that. You've got Ferguson, who can go out wide, or he can come in and line up as a tight end. And you've got Davis Allen, who's a good blocker and can be useful in certain pass situations. And then you just put the defense in so much conflict where, once you do get into that, they do get into that 13 personnel. A lot of times you are like, especially because I think The Rams have dropped out of 13 personnel 76 times, and 62 of those dropbacks have been play action. So like there's no room for the defense to assume they're going to go either way, run or pass. And it's then Stafford just wheeling and dealing and finding the soft spots and finding where defenders are missing and working off of that.
So
And then
we give Stafford a lot of the credit on all of that, but it's important to note, like, it's because the guys are able to win their one-on-one situations,
yes,
right? So, I mean, you got to talk a little bit about Puka. We looked at a couple of his clips. He's running through the line of scrimmage. Maybe he has choice routes where he can kind of choose where he wants to go. But he's able to separate. He has elite hands. And then he's also able to make guys miss in space that make these, like, no one gets excited over like a 2-yard pass that's like right beyond the line of scrimmage. But I mean, he's probably one of the best, maybe I'd say top 3 definitely in terms of wide receivers at making guys miss in space.
Yeah, and what they've kind of unlocked the last couple weeks and really this season in general is Puka's ability to win deep. You didn't see it a ton early in his career. He was a lot of working over the middle. It was a lot of just like out routes, hitch routes, letting him win in contested, congested situations. But he's grown as a receiver. He's gotten better. He understands leverage, and now he's able to use what his tendencies were early in his career to his advantage to now win deep. And he did it against the Lions a couple times. They get into a tight 13 personnel. You get a one-on-one.
Is this the over the shoulder deep?
So this is okay. Yeah. So this is just, again, now the Lions play a pretty aggressive man coverage defense, but so do the Seahawks. And knowing that he's the safeties already, he sees the safety. Stafford knows the safety's in the middle of the field. He's got a decent amount of room to the right. There's no way the safety's going to get over the top in time. And Puka's, you can kind of see it at the top, at the break of he's going to play his tendency. He's going to give a little stutter step, feign, breaking outside on like a sail route or an out route, wait for the corner to bite and then burst up field. He gets a step. And then, Stafford puts it in.
Not only did that like stutter freeze the corner, it froze the safety too. If you like go back when he's about to do it, like typically what you would see here is this safety may try to split the difference between the 2 guys that are going vertical so that he can maybe play over the top in either situation. And like you've got another guy running vertically, kind of pressing the middle of the field. So maybe that's the safety's responsibility as well. But it's clearly like the corner's on him too. And he's just frozen. So, and that's probably because he thinks Puka's going out and not going vertically.
Right.
In which case he's not going to go over the top of him. And it's just another, I don't know if that's exactly like how they designed the play or if that's just Puka, coming up with his own creativity within a route, but it's beautiful.
And then now, like, again, this was another deep shot. And this was, this is an end of half situation where they hit Puka, and the fact that they had the gall to do this, and mainly, again, it's just Puka winning. But again, the safety shaded toward the middle of the field. He's probably waiting to see what these 2 like mid-deep level defenders are going to do here. He sees they're not getting a ton of depth right away. Puka wins off the line of scrimmage and then just torches the defender with a great move at the top of his route where, again, I talked about how like their receivers are really good at understanding leverage. And so this is where he knows the corner has inside leverage on him. So he's going to use that. So he kind of works into the body a little bit, gets his full body weight kind of leaning on the defender, with the defender probably anticipating an in-breaking, deep post. But then Puka works off of that and just sends the defender flying. And Stafford, again, puts a perfect ball where the safety isn't able to get to it in time. And the other defender's on the ground. And it's just they're both so good at doing that. It's just, like we could even look at Davante Adams here. He he's going to run this is, I think it's not the blaze out that he ran in the game, but the corners got outside leverage on him. They're showing zone, mainly cover 3. And so Davante Adams knows that he has to win outside despite the defender being outside. So what does he do? He hits a jab step inside. That pulls the defender in just enough, and then he swims by him and he gets 2 yards of separation towards the sideline, and Stafford puts it in the perfect spot. And again, this is now
it's even a situation where like he shouldn't that probably shouldn't necessarily happen like that route. There's a lot of times where teams will run plays and routes that play into what the defense is doing, and in that situation he still finds a way to win, and that's when you see like that's what a truly elite receiver looks like.
Right. And this is, I think, I'm sure Davante Adams is very good at scouting and watching film. And so he knows that the Lions defenders are super aggressive on breaks. And so he works that of just like the corner's going to run with him if he breaks in, despite knowing that he has inside help from the deep safety. But he uses that, and the flat defender's the hook to curl defender's not going to get out wide enough to make a play on that. And it just creates a one-on-one opportunity that Adams is going to win a lot of times because he's still separating at an elite level. And I think he's a top 3 separator in the NFL based on what we have charted. And that's the issue.
And it doesn't matter if it's man or zone. Like he's just good. That's what it is.
Right. Yeah. He just is good. And Stafford puts elite placement, and most that was out of 12 personnel, and this is out of 13 personnel. They have Ferguson lined up in the slot here. But again, Davante Adams is really good at working these out routes where he's going to create his own space outside. And again, he just works that in cut to pull the defender inside enough, and then is able to work outside. That defender doesn't get wide enough. And I'm sure Stafford is giving eyes towards the middle of the field and then, kind of flips it out wide. And it's so hard to win against this team on defense because they have so many weapons. They're working play action a ton. Their run game is working really well, so the play action works really well. And they have receivers out wide that can win consistently. And they work it together so unbelievably well.
It's pretty interesting because the past couple of years, I feel like the Rams have been more of a run-leaning team, right? Like, if you look at Stafford's stats over the past, 2 years or so, it hasn't been anything that impressive. I think it may be somewhat offensive line related. Cup was deteriorating a little bit, so they were kind of leaning on just Puka to be able to make things happen. And now adding Davante Adams back into the mix, having a truly elite receiver out there that can win in both man and zone situations, I feel like they just said, you know what? We know that our quarterback is elite. We're just going to go out there. We're still going to be a little bit balanced, but in certain situations, we'll let our quarterback dictate what the defense, dictate what we see from the defense, and then call the plays at the line of scrimmage. If it's a run, pass, get us into a better situation and just win.
And I've talked about it, but I really want to get into how Stafford really opens up this pass game. And I'm just going to show a couple clips of what he does with his eyes and just him reading defenses. So here, Stafford's really good. It's tough to blitz Stafford because Stafford is good at recognizing it and good at knowing where to go with the ball when a blitz comes. And so here he's, they've got the linebackers up on the line of scrimmage. He's anticipating a blitz. He brings in the running back to help with blitz pickup. And Corum is a pretty good pass protector. And then Stafford just replaces. He just knows, he sees where the blitz is coming from. He sees, okay, this corner at the top of the screen leaves. That means Puka is going to be open underneath because there's no way the linebacker dropping out is going to get there in time. And then again, Puka's such a bully that, even after the 6-yard catch, he's still going to turn 5-6 yards of contact and, work and get as many yards out of it as possible. But then also Stafford's really good at manipulating coverages. And so this was against the first matchup of Seattle. And this is what he does is he knows he's getting zone coverage. No one comes in with the tight end. So odds are he's seeing zone coverage. He gets a blitz. Okay, that means that the middle of the field is going to be open, but he has to open that middle of the field for himself. And so what he does is this linebacker's never going to get enough depth, and Stafford knows he can rip it over him. He needs to move this deep safety, and he needs to move this midfield safety a little bit. So he gives eyes over to the 3 wide receiver set over here. That gets the safety's hips flipped that way. And then he's just able to rip a pass to Davante. Davante doesn't make the catch, but he's just so quick.
He had an opportunity to.
Yeah, and there's just no opportunity for defenders to make a play because he's so good at manipulating to create these one-on-one matchups. And again, it's like that is what this entire offense is moving off of, is just Stafford manipulating the defense to create one-on-ones, and then the receivers winning 9 times out of 10.
The fact that he was able to sneak that ball in, I mean, goodness gracious.
Yeah, he's crazy. And he's also he's just good at getting through his progressions of figuring out, okay, I see, they're pretty wide. Like you might get man to man. He sees the float defender. Okay, it's pretty congested over here. There's nothing to be open there. He knows he needs to move this float defender, Jack Campbell, a little bit. He moves him off, and then now he's created one-on-one matchups with both with both the slot, Davante Adams, and then the outside receiver. And then from there, it's just Adams wins his route. The middle of the field is wide open because he's moved the defender off their spots, creating a wide open throwing lane, and he's going to rip it in there. And
why is that something that we don't see other quarterbacks able to do as easily? Like I'm going to set you up for somewhat failure here because I'm going to talk about your guy Jared Goff and Matt Stafford and just kind of pit them against each other, being that they were both on Detroit at some point or now. And like, what's the difference between the two? Like, why is it that a guy like Stafford can do this, but a guy like Jared Goff maybe cannot do this?
So I actually think Goff is decent at it. I think what separates Stafford from Goff is Stafford's arm strength, his change of angles, and his willingness to throw it into tighter windows. I like really why you don't see this league wide is I think that quarterbacks are mistake averse, which all quarterbacks are, but are afraid to make mistakes. And Stafford's never been that way. Stafford is willing to throw interceptions. It's that's kind of the give and take that he has, is that he will try and manipulate the defense. And he will try his no look passes, and he's kind of predetermining a lot of his throws, but he uses his eyes to move defenders, especially in zone coverage. And that's kind of why, if you've looked at his career, his stats against zone have always been really, really good. His stats against man coverage have always kind of fluctuated. And that's, I think, a product of him over relying on his guys to win and I don't want to say predetermine where he's going. I just know I said that, but I probably should pull off of that. But he knows where he wants to go with the ball, and he knows defenses so well. He's seen a ton that he's willing to put it into tight windows. He's willing to put it into tight coverage because he can put it on a dot. And a lot of the times when he makes an interception, throws an interception, it's because the defender wins against the receiver, or a defender drops out into an area that he isn't anticipating, or doesn't follow the eyes and plays the defense their own way rather than reading Stafford's eyes. But this year, I think with how many weapons that Stafford has, it's elevated to a different level, because I think there's just so much stress on the defenders to have to lean several ways, because you can't just key in on one receiver for Stafford. And they just have good receivers all in all. And so again, Stafford, here, this is really Stafford seeing that he's going to get a one-on-one matchup with Puka down at the bottom. He sees the far safety drop out towards the Whittington and Adams. He sees the field or the short side safety creep up. Again, that means he knows he has Puka one-on-one with this corner. And so he's just going to rely on Puka to win. So he moves the safety with his eyes, brings him towards the middle. And then it's a one-on-one opportunity, and he's just going to ask his receiver to go win. And now he has multiple guys that can win one-on-one so often. And Puka's really good at releasing off the line of the scrimmage. It's tough to press him because he is so physical, and he's got a good release package that Stafford's not afraid to put it up to him and give him a chance.
Yeah, and he's obviously playing at an elite level. He is the favorite to win NFL MVP this year. I'm actually curious from your perspective if he should.
I think so. I think he's playing at an incredible level. I think that, McVay they've drafted well. They've got good weapons around him, but I think that really Stafford's ability to work off of it and work off the run game, use the play action, and manipulate with his eyes. Because here, he creates a wide open opportunity for Terrence Ferguson. He'll miss the throw because, hey, he does get a little cocky, but it's a no look because he's eyeing Mumpfield up top. He knows the safety sees him coming, and Stafford.
The safety completely moves
right
in that direction.
Right. The safety's reading eyes right away. He sees Stafford look to Mumpfield, so he's there. That the defender on the outside follows Mumpfield as well, and that just creates a wide open hole for Terrence Ferguson. Stafford misses the throw, but you can just see what he does with his eyes, where he then just, again, no look rips it to Terrence Ferguson, and he missed it, but this is just the type of stuff that he's able to do. And this is where they work their in breakers a lot. This is end zone view because I want to show Stafford's eyes, but on the outside, you've got, I think it's Puka Nacua, and they love to work those post routes, and he'll again manipulate defenders where he needs to move. This is just crazy. This is end of the half, but there's a deep linebacker in the end zone. He wants to fit it up the seam, and so he's looking to the outside. He rips it again. He misses it, but not many quarterbacks are ever throwing that throw. And he actually gets it into the window. It was good coverage, and Allen should have worked inside, but you can see the ball where the ball is. He put it where nobody else but his receiver could get it.
Right between three guys. And if his receiver dives on the ground, he would be able to get it, and he probably wouldn't get crushed also. It's underrated that was a low throw, because if he fits it in there, but the guy is catching it with his arms or catching it with his body, he's going to get absolutely rocked.
Yeah. And so this is one of the in breakers that I was talking about, but they get into a heavy personnel. They motion the tight end into kind of a inside tight end, fullback type position. They work the play action, and now he sees the safety's going to drop out. He knows he just needs to move this second level defender, because the second level defender, Anzalone, is responsible for this, window that he's trying to work. So what does he do? He flips his eyes out to the flat. There's not I should have grabbed the all 22, but there's not even a receiver. There's not a receiver out going to the flat. Puka's on his own, isolated outside, but he just needs to move that defender enough. And he does. Anzalone moves just enough to the outside. Stafford whizzes it over his shoulder, and it was Davante Adams, but Davante Adams wins on his route because they're playing kind of a cover 3. So the defender's never going to break fast enough inside to stay with Davante Adams. It really is Anzalone's job to stay in that throwing lane to defend it. But Stafford is so good with his eyes that he's able to widen Anzalone enough. He glances at Adams just enough to get the ball in there, and then Adams works off of it. And then he did it later in the game too. It was the same type of thing where they motion the tight end out. You've got Puka outside of the tight end. He knows he needs to manipulate Anzalone again. He's got eyes out towards the flat. that freezes Anzalone, and then he rips it right over his shoulder, and Puka wins inside, and then he's crazy yak, and it's hard to bring down. And it's just, this is what Stafford's doing this year. He did it against Seattle too, where he wants to get Puka here on an in-breaking route. He needs to move this linebacker that's dropping out, and he needs to move this linebacker that's dropping out as well. And so he glances over to the left first. That moves the left linebacker. He glances back over to the right, keeps his eyes out wide, which freezes that linebacker there. And he rips it right in there on a no look to Puka. Puka ends up fumbling, but that is what is like really making this offense, is just the ability for the receivers to win one-on-one, and Stafford using his eyes to create one-on-one opportunities for his receivers.
I noticed that most of the clips that you showed were kind of a home indoor turf situation. I mean, on the road, going to Seattle, potential weather situation going on as well. We've got the 12th man. Like, how does that all apply back to the matchup that we're going to see this week, tomorrow?
I think it means that they're probably going to work the run game a little bit more. And they have, what is a two-headed monster now in this run game. And their offensive line has won in the run game so well this year. I think that no offensive line really in the NFL has been as good at getting to the second level and really matching all defenders as well as the Rams. And, we've talked about it. They really like to do a ton of motion, and a lot of that motion is trying to create box advantages for themselves within the run game. And so what they'll do is, they run a lot of man duo stuff, and they use a lot of their tight ends to motion around and create insert blocks on these man concept runs. And so with this,
you're creating a fullback there, where it's like, hey, this is the hole. This is a man duo kind of situation. This is the hole, and this tight end that's motioning in is basically the fullback.
Yeah, and now you've created an advantage where this corner didn't motion in, obviously, because he needs to maintain outside leverage, which then creates you've got 1, 2, 3, like 8 guys in the box ready to block. You've got 7 guys who are really in the run concept that need to be blocked, and they're able to get all of them. And so there's a hat on a hat, and then it's just up to the running back to find the hole and get upfield. And so that's what they're really good at, is that I think out of the 13 personnel, they're averaging 2.5 yards before contact. And a huge reason for that is that they're able to create these box advantages, and they're able to get a hat on a hat and get their offensive linemen off the double teams up to the second level. They're able to get a fullback inserted tight end up to the second level. And then it's really just up to the running back to make the play happen, win at the second level, and go get 6 yards. This guy, like here, Kyren Williams isn't getting contacted until 6 yards down the field. And
do you think that their box advantages are based off of the fact that they've got Puka and Davante as well? Like this, you see here, like the safeties are both sitting back, and in a lot of situations when you're in like 12 or 13 personnel, you'd see a lot of teams maybe like roll a safety up instead of have them, back.
yeah.
So I'm just curious if you think that has like a lot to do with it too.
I think so, because of how often they work play action out of their 12, 13 personnel. I think it forces defenses to stay deeper because you don't want to get burnt deep on a play action. And it does leave you with just a pretty typical 7-man defensive box rather than getting that 8th man up into the box pre-snap. And they just motion to manipulate. And here you get Davis Allen motioning across as like a lead, as a lead blocker. He picks up Hutchinson on the outside. And then again, you can see it here that there's a hat on a hat.
Massive hole.
You've got guys up on the second level. All the linebackers are covered. You've got Puka working up to the safety. Davante Adams is working out to the corner. there's one guy out of this entire thing. Like DJ Reed's out of the play pretty much. He's outside. He's never going to do anything. And it's just a one-on-one matchup with this safety working downfield. And so he's already at 6-7 yards before he gets contacted. And I don't think like Kyren Williams is a decent back. Like he's a good back. I think he reads and finds the hole really well, but he doesn't have a ton of like wiggle at the second level or anything. But it doesn't matter when you're getting up to the second level untouched and you're working against a safety. That's what you want as an offense every time, is you want these matchups against safeties. And so, again, they get into this. Now they're into like a fullback 21 personnel. They motion Ferguson across. It creates again a box advantage. And they, again, are so good at working up to the second level. You get the fullback onto Amenwari because Amenwari plays super hard downhill against the run. So I think that's why they used a fullback a decent amount against Seattle, is they want to get the fullback downhill because I think they see that Amenwari is going to come in pretty hot usually on the weak side. But they get a hat on a hat, and then it's one-on-one into the secondary. Kyren Williams wins, and it's a 34-yard gain. And that's why they're able to create so many explosive runs in the second game, is that their offensive line works really well. The running backs know their path. They know where the one-on-one matchup is probably going to be. And then it's just doing their best to, win that matchup. And so they'll also,
on the running back front, I was curious, you're talking about Kyren and you mentioned it already where, hey, like he's getting a lot of room to run. He's generally going to have all of that space for himself. Do you feel like he's a very, very talented back, or is he just, I know where the hole is, I'm going to find it, and I'm going to be able to get through it, but I'm not someone that's really going to break long runs or really force like guys to miss tackles in the open field that often?
Yeah, I would not classify him as a very, very good back. I think that's why they brought Corum in, because one, I think that being able to keep Kyren Williams fresh, the fresher he is, as most running backs, the better, the faster he runs, the more elusive he becomes, rather than having him run it 25 times a game, which is what they were kind of doing last year. And I think now with having Corum and his, he's very, I think, somewhat similar to Kyren. I think he's a little bit better at breaking tackles, and I'll show it in a second on the next play. Actually, I think this is Corum right here. But they also, like, what they'll do is they'll set up for their man duo runs, and this was on a 4th and 1, and so they get the defense all kind of all shoved inside, and they'll go with a tendency breaker, and they'll go outside zone, and they're able to get outside. They're able to get the outside leverage, and then Corum's never going to go down with arm tackles. He's really good at reading holes, and he just gets upfield. Or this is Kyren, okay. But again, it's just Kyren's good at finding the hole. I think that's where he's a really good back, is he's good. He has really good vision. Rarely do you see Kyren Williams miss the hole. And any running back in open space, if you can get one-on-one against a safety with a two-way go, he's going to win that stuff. But
One thing that's interesting with that too is just the way that they do their tight splits. And with that clip that you were showing before this, like everybody's pretty condensed. So what they're doing there is creating basically more holes, right?
Right.
To muddy the water a little bit. And so the running back is then able to choose whether they want to cut back or if they want to go through the C gap, the D gap, like whatever hole that they want to go through, they basically have that opportunity with that outside zone. And now they've created like they've created a D gap, they've created an E gap,
right?
Because they've put additional receivers in those slots to make it pretty hard to understand like where the running back will end up going. He's probably got the choice of going wherever he wants in that situation, wherever the hole determines that's what zone blocking is.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly what outside zone is it's just once that lane opens, fire into it. It also helps that they have Puka, who is such a good and willing run blocker that he's able to work all the way up to the third level and get to Eminwari and get a hat on a hat and create that. So like it's just they get with Puka's so good at run blocking, and he probably like I know Mina Kimes gives him a ton of credit for it, and I don't think enough people do. Is that he opens up this run game so much more because like he's able to freeze Eminwari because he knows that he's going to have to take on this block, and that just creates probably 5 or 6 more yards of room for running because they're not going to get Eminwari super downhill like he likes to do. And then what I think they like their bread and butter is man duo. I think that's what Sean McVay works really well. They do it really well out of their heavy personnel. And they like to do this little short motion with their receivers again to create a box advantage where it could be, I think this is Xavier Smith there. No, that's Mumfield there. So like it did really like all of their receivers are willing blockers.
And it's basically a requirement to be on the team, right?
Exactly. And so it doesn't matter who they have in this personnel. They're going to bring them in and they're going to expect their guys to go and make a block. And again, you can just see they create a wall. They all work up to the second level. You've got a hat on a hat. And then what I think Corum's really good at doing, he's probably one of the best in the NFL, is that he just drives his legs better than any running back I think I've seen in a while, is that you can kind of see he's firing those legs. And that's where like a lot of his missed tackles come from, is just that I think defenders get kind of lackadaisical. They get him wrapped up and assume he's going to go down, but he keeps his legs firing. Here, Tyleek Williams is able to rein him in.
It's kind of interesting on the Corum front too. Like, before the season, a lot of people were not sure if he would be kind of their second banana, if they would even use a second banana because of what happened the first year. Obviously, Corum was a little bit injured too.
Right.
And then they drafted Jarquez Hunter, and a lot of people, especially in the fantasy community, were like, well, this guy adds a different element. He's more like speedy, and Corum's more of a clone of Kyren, right?
Right.
But you come into this year, and now, I actually think Corum's a better running back than Kyren as of right now.
Do too. I think that he offers a little bit more missed tackle ability than Kyren does, but they'll work man and zone, but their tendency breaker, like with Gurley, Sean McVay was a big outside zone. That was what, people talk about it with the Shanahan system. People had talked about it with the McVay system. And now it's almost as though outside zone is somewhat of a tendency breaker for them, where they'll work so much duo and so many inside runs that when they're able to get to their outside zone, defenses just don't flow fast enough. And this is Kyren Williams again, but they're just really good at, again, you see Ferguson. I kind of talked about it earlier, where getting a 13 package, but getting Ferguson as an outside receiver and him working in the run game, is that he's able to come in and get a hat on, filling safeties and linebackers and not get blown out. And it creates running lanes. And again, like they're just so good at getting up to the second level. You can see I think it's the guard and the tackle in the center. Both are able to work off their double teams and get up to the second level. And it's just that they have such a willingness and an almost excitement across the entire board, receivers, tight ends, and offensive linemen, of working up and getting everybody blocked and creating one-on-one opportunities for their running backs. And against Seattle, it can be a little bit tougher sledding. They have 2 really good interior defensive linemen. They have Leonard Williams, he's a tough guy to run man duo, to run like duo or man concept stuff against. But they just will keep hammering the run game until it wears you down. And then once the run game starts going, they get into play action, and it just the versatility of this offense, the versatility of their formations, and Stafford being who he is, it just all creates so many opportunities across the board for every guy in that offense.
The interesting thing was that before McDonald took the job with the Seahawks, he was kind of lauded as like the Shanahan tree stopper. Like
Right.
anytime his defenses went up against any of the Shanahan offenses, um, you know, they actually performed really well. They were able to bottle that up. Of course, McVay has put his own twist on that Shanahan offense, and like you said, shifting from the more like zone heavy run blocking scheme to a man gap duo situation um, is actually a pretty big change. But we've still seen McDonald have some success. Like it's not like the Rams were able to score like 30 points on the Seahawks earlier this year, right? Like we
Right.
showed a lot of good clips of them doing great stuff, but it was still, I think it was 21-18 if I can remember off the top of my head.
Yeah,
And
18 or 19, something like that.
yeah, and so I still think that the way that this game ends up playing out, you're going to see the Rams win some plays on offense. You're going to see the Seahawks win some plays on defense. The weather is a question. We're hearing that it's going to be 20-mile-per-hour winds or more throughout the game. You'll probably see both teams try to lean on the run. The Seahawks run game is pretty trash to be like very brief about it. The Rams run game is obviously pretty good. We just talked about it. When it comes down to that, though, and teams get a little bit more predictable, I mean, you got to want to trust the team that has Matt Stafford that's going to get them into a better play call, potentially be able to read the defense and then understand when, hey, we're going in these 13 personnel looks or 12 personnel looks. I think that we've ran the ball so many times, we've kind of built off of these types of plays. Now we're going to pull play action and get Puka moving and into a favorable situation. You've got to think that they're going to have some shots, even with 20-mile-per-hour winds. Like Stafford has the arm to make things happen still.
Yeah, he's got a rocket for an arm, so he can whip it in there fast enough that it almost isn't affected by the wind. I think Mike McDonald will come with a lot of coverage versatility. I mean, even against the Rams in the first matchup, they kind of went against tendency and they ran a lot more man. They ran almost 40% man coverage against the Rams in the first matchup, which they're, if you look at the rest of their season, they sit in top 5 in zone coverage. They usually run at about 77%, but I think McDonald knows, and they have the secondary that they will lean into man coverage a little bit more because it is a tendency breaker for themselves. And it's really where you can kind of win against Stafford is if you can play good tight man coverage. I mean, as is any defense, but like especially against Stafford, is that he's gonna try to fit it into tight windows. And so if they can be sticky, which they were in the first matchup. I mean, Stafford went 15 for 28 in the first matchup. It was like a 53% completion percentage. And a lot of his wins were a lot of his, big plays were on plays where he was able to manipulate a one-on-one matchup and the receiver ended up winning. But they were a lot of contested targets. I mean, you saw in that Davante Adams inbreaker, the corner was still despite creating the one-on-one matchups, despite getting the inside leverage, the corner was still there to make a play. The ball was a little high and Stafford put it away from coverage, but the corner was there. And, even on that back shoulder throw to Puka, the corner recovered pretty well and was able to kind of make a play on that hitch route I showed. The corner fired down and made a play on it. So like that is where they can win, is that they have the secondary to play with these receivers, whereas last week against the Lions just didn't have the dudes to make those plays. And, I could lament about how they played way too much man coverage for the guys that they have, and they refuse to go against it. But, Seattle does have Reek Woolen. They have Josh Jobe, who's played incredibly well. Emin Wari in the middle, who, is a can be a tight end leader. Witherspoon's very good. Their safeties are playing well and playing downhill. So that's where this is a tough defensive matchup for Stafford, and it'll be interesting without Davante. If they don't have Davante Adams, that kind of changes things up. With they don't have a guy that can win they lose a guy that can win a lot of one-on-one matchups, and
Yeah.
so how does that end up working out, and what does like a guy like Mumfield do against like a Reek Woolen or a Josh Jobe compared to Davante Adams? So I think this will be like I really don't anticipate the weather affecting how McVay calls the game as much. Like I still think they work a lot of what they have been working, which is a lot of mid to deep in breaking routes with the occasional like Puka one-on-one outside. But it just comes down to, can the defense stick with these guys?
Yeah, I do see maybe the play calls changing a little bit given the fact that Davante is not expected to play. Like, but I know that they try to do like a one-for-one replacement with other guys, but I think that you have to kind of think through. I mean, you don't have two elite receivers. Do you revert back to what your offense was more like last year?
Right.
And the situation where you start going a little bit more run heavy compared to being a little bit more pass happy. And I think that, I mean, the weather may not necessarily be the factor that makes that happen, but the fact that they don't have Davante Adams may be the actual trigger to lean more into the run game in that
Yeah,
situation.
and I think I don't think they were going to go super heavy against Seattle anyway, but I think it does kind of take away from the opportunity to go as much 12 and 13 personnel in passing. Like, in that kind of lends to down the road too, if like this hamstring injury goes more into the next couple weeks. Like that, I think that influences their heavy personnel, their 12, 13 personnel, because I like what's a big thing with that is that it is able to isolate Davante Adams on a lot of one-on-one situations, because you do get the defense so condensed on focusing on defending the run. And they're, whether they're, I don't know, like resting Puka in the sense of, he hasn't really eclipsed a ton of his 56 or eclipsed more than like 50-60% route share. But then like I don't think they're gonna work a lot of one-on-ones with a Xavier Smith, or definitely like definitely not Whittington, probably not Xavier Smith. And so like that amount that they're able to get to that, I don't think they want to use Puka that way as much. And
Yeah.
so I think it does influence their tendency to go super heavy.
Yeah. I don't know. So I'm thinking about the fantasy angle here with Stafford specifically, and then I can get into some of the other players too. Stafford, I mean, I would probably look for more options. I mean, I think Stafford's an incredible quarterback, but given the fact that Davante may not be there, I don't think the wind is as much of a factor for him. But potentially without Davante, they decide to lean more into the run game. It's a really tough matchup. With how good Stafford is, I mean, sometimes that stuff doesn't matter, but I would probably look for other options if I could.
I would
Um,
too. I
uh,
actually had someone text me today and ask me if they should start Stafford, and I leaned away. One, because it's a Thursday night. Two, because of a little bit because of the weather, and three, the Seattle defense is really good, and they're gonna keep them in the game. Like I think this is
well,
gonna be
people are a little bit like weirded out by the fact that the Colts were able to score 18 points with a guy that hadn't played in like 4 or 5 years. But I mean, you could just see with the time to throw metrics. I think Rivers had like a 2.2 second time to throw, which is like
yeah,
record breaking low.
right.
Um, I don't think Stafford's going to lean into anything like that either. And also, the Seahawks are, now that they've seen something like that, they're probably more ready to handle a situation like that as well.
Yeah, and like right now, I mean, Stafford's like from a betting angle, his passing yards are sitting at like a 228.5 is his passing line right now.
Yeah,
That like feels right, and I feel like that would be, I would lean under on that rather
yeah,
than over, because I could see them, like you said, leaning more into the run game and really working a mix of Corum and Kyren against this defense, and just kind of, because like even if you look at what they did against Seattle in the first matchup, they had like 119 yards, they averaged 5 yards a carry, but their success rate was pretty low. They only had like a 36% success rate, but they had a 13% explosive run. And I think that's kind of what they want to do against a team like Seattle, is they want to just kind of keep pounding it and waiting for those like couple, big runs to break that they tend to do once or twice a game. And again, against Seattle, it was like 3 or 4 times. And so I really think that they will want to lean into that. And it'll probably be a lower passing attempt type game for Stafford. Whereas like last week, I think he had like, close to like over 30 passing attempts. I think this week it'll probably be more like mid to low 20s. And a lot of it is going to be like working off play action, working off of that run game.
Yeah, lull them to sleep, kind of keep pounding, have play action. Hopefully you get the safeties biting, especially with the cover three. Like if you can get that middle of the field safety like asleep a little bit and then sneak a guy behind him on like a deep post or crosser or something, I mean, you may have some opportunity shots down the field, and that's kind of what I expect the Rams offense to look like. Now, the fantasy angle on Puka is like you're playing him no matter
Right.
what.
Right.
Any other receiving options are completely unplayable from my perspective. If Davante ends up playing this week, I would say if you have somebody that's kind of in the wide receiver 2, wide receiver 1 range, like I would play any of those options above Davante this week specifically, only because of the hamstring. You don't know
Yep.
how much they're going to limit him. If he's just out there to be some sort of a like decoy to open up other things, like I don't know. But those are the situations where I would probably sit him. If you're looking at like wide receiver 3 options, let's just say Pat Bryant's out again and you're looking at Troy Franklin versus like Davante Adams. I would play Davante Adams in that
Yeah.
situation.
And
So it's close, but
And I wonder, because Seattle can be somewhat of a tight end funnel because their secondary, because their outside corners are solid and Devin Witherspoon is solid. It kind of ends up that teams will work tight ends a little bit more. So I wonder if Terrence Ferguson is if you're like, I feel like tight ends have been kind of all over the board if you don't have one of the top guys. And so like I would think that like Ferguson might be a like streaming play this week, and like a potential, high ceiling, low floor type of guy, where I mean McVay has talked about it pretty consistently throughout the last couple weeks about what Terrence Ferguson brings to this offense and how he's versatile as both a route runner and being able to block. And so I wonder if I think it hasn't really happened where he's had like a big breakout game. And I wonder if this is one of those games where they do lean a little bit more on their tight ends. They work that boot action a decent amount, and they work Ferguson up the seams and over the middle a little bit more to try to work matchups against their linebackers. I think that is probably more the angle that they go if Adams is out.
Yeah, what's interesting is that last game, Ferguson had his highest route participation of the year. He was actually he had the highest route participation on the entire team at 70%. They have been talking about how they like him, how he's a good blocker, how you can stretch him out wide. That when they initially drafted him, they talked about how he could potentially play out wide. And when we hear that about tight ends, we get kind of like squeamish about it because it's not something that a lot of teams actually do. They especially not consistently. Teams don't put they don't draft a tight end to then put him at like X receiver. They draft a tight end to have him potentially line up as the Y, like kind of slot guy or inline. And Terrence Ferguson's not like, I don't think his best situation is as an inline tight end. So, they've been moving him around, and in that 13 personnel that we talk about, I think it's very interesting because he's in that formation. And a lot of times when you think about 13 personnel, you're thinking more of like a heavy look where you have 3 guys attached to the line of scrimmage as inline tight ends.
Yep.
But no, they're diverse in the way that they deploy it. They have 13 personnel, but they have 2 wide receivers out there.
Yep.
Right? Their receiver is effectively Terrence Ferguson in that situation. So I think he's an interesting one for this week. Also, I like from a season long perspective. I feel like I can find something better, but
Yeah.
it depends on how deep your league is. Um, but like DFS for sure. Like I really think Terrence Ferguson's a great DFS play this week because, especially coming off of like most people are going to be leaning into Colby Parkinson because he just had a big blow up week and he's looked solid the past like couple.
Yeah.
But you can see like even the plays that you showed, a lot of times it happened to be the way that the play design worked out, where it's like Stafford's looking this way. This guy is now in an open field situation. The one that he missed to Parkinson that you said earlier, like he's wide open. Those
That was
situations
actually
happen.
Ferguson. That was Ferguson that he missed on that one.
Oh,
And
that's
that
right, Ferguson. So just like, but these situations that come up, like I think it's one of those things where it could be any of them. So, and they're going to lean into both of them playing quite a bit.
yeah.
So if you're doing a DFS angle, like I think it's good leverage to be off of Colby Parkinson because a lot of people have seen the production lately, and now you have an opportunity to potentially lean into a guy like Ferguson instead.
Yeah, and a lot of and like you had said and what we had shown on film, a lot of that Parkinson stuff was working off of like a boot action and being able to kind of leak across the formation and get defenders caught up in the wash, or like his deep touchdown that he had, the controversial touchdown that he had, like that was they were able to, it was the Rams manipulating. They sent him out wide. They got him one on one with a safety, and Stafford, a lot of times is going to go to that, and so they will mess around with Ferguson and Parkinson and a little Davis Allen. They usually keep pretty attached to the line, and they use him a lot of like motion in the box type stuff, more so as like manipulating as a blocker. But Parkinson and Ferguson, they'll move around a decent amount where they'll try to split them out wide every once in a while to see like, okay, does the defense send a corner out there, or are they going to send a safety? And they try to manipulate matchups that way. And so, yeah, it really is just who they like, where Stafford sees the advantage. And, last week it was Parkinson. I think that this week I think it would be more, Ferguson, but I think that Parkinson has his value in the fact that they will work a lot of run and they will work that outside zone, and they love to work that boot. Like most of their boot action comes off of outside zone action because it gets the defense flowing one way so much that it creates a lot of openings on the other side, like we kind of saw with what had happened against the Lions, where Parkinson got open into the flat a decent amount because they're able to collapse those backside ends so heavily, or and usually the back, either if the backside end is or linebacker is supposed to drop out, a lot of times they'll just work up towards Stafford because they know that they're not going to get out to their coverage area in time. And so they're like, it's kind of just a grab bag of hoping that Parkinson gets open in those areas, or hoping that Ferguson gets a matchup in those areas. And it's kind of a coin flip, really, is what it feels like.
Yeah. Yeah. And then when I think about the running backs, I mean, it's also a tough matchup. We said that they're going to lean into their run, so I think the volume will be there. We
Yeah.
know from a fantasy angle that receptions are more valuable than rushes for running backs too. But I mean, my personal opinion, like I do think that this is going to be a lower scoring game. I
Yeah.
haven't actually checked the Vegas line for what the actual like over under is for the team total. But the way that I see this playing out is a lot of running and potentially like a 17-14 type of matchup. And so that makes me a little bit scared about even wanting to lean into the running backs too heavily. Looking at anytime touchdowns right now, and we can even like look at the fantasy points ranks and everything too. Like Kyren is plus 125 to score a touchdown, so he's not even like favored to score in this game, which I think is interesting. Corum is plus 270. This is all coming from DraftKings. And then their rushing lines are I'm pulling it up right now. The rushing yards are at for Kyren, it's 55.5 over under, and Corum 37.5. And I don't think that from a fantasy angle, like I'm too excited to play either of them, to be quite honest. And I know like you'd probably drafted Kyren super high, and Corum's been able to give decent production lately, so maybe you have to lean into them. But I'm like thinking about and I always say this phrase, but where the Wandy line is, like where am I looking to potentially cut off and pivot away?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to start like reading off a couple of names that I think might actually be better options. I'm pulling up the fantasy points ranks to think through this too, because again, Chris Wecht and team like do a really good job of putting together all the numbers, and they do use all of the charting metrics that like guys like Steve and myself and et cetera that go through the process and do. So just looking at other options, some guys that I would think might be better than sticking to your Kyren situation that are kind of in the same question. Like I like Judkins more this week. I think Sampson will probably be out, and Ford I think they put on IR or something like that too.
Yeah.
So like I could see him consolidating a ton of volume against Buffalo, even though they're probably not going to score a ton of points. Like I want to lean into the fact that Buffalo is terrible against the run,
Yep.
and Judkins will just gobble up as many touches as possible. Looking at other guys that might be close in this situation too. Like honestly, this sounds kind of odd, but Kenny Gainwell, like
I mean, Kenneth Gainwell's been. I would start him if you got him. I would start him because his ability in the receiving game has been a game changer. And he
yeah,
actually he had more carries than Jalen Warren last week and
yeah.
and took over the snap share a little bit.
I mean, it's surprising the fantasy points ranks have him at ranked RB9 on the week so far. And I know things will change because people be at like sitting or whatever. But I think that's like a unique one where people probably might not think about Gainwell over Kyren in a specific situation like this.
Yeah.
Other guys that I think are interesting, there's some names on here that I'm like, I disagree with ranks all the time. So, take it for what it is. Other guys that I think are interesting, RJ Harvey, I think that could be more obvious. DeAndre Swift is another one that I think I would probably lean into over Kyren against the Packers. And I know that would be kind of questionable in some people's heads too. So I think there's other options. I would see if there's something else that you could potentially put in instead of Kyren this week. I would sit Blake Corum also. And then when we look at like the rushing attempts over unders, this is where I think there might be a betting angle, because we just talked about how like we think that the Rams will lean into the run game. And I'm sitting here looking at Kyren, who's averaging 15 rush attempts per game, and his rushing over under is 13.5. Now I know that they've leaned into some Corum too, and it's swung a little bit here and there. Most important games of the season. If you remember back when the Rams played the 49ers earlier this year, that was at that time like the most important game of the season. Kyren basically played like nearly all the snaps. Last time they played the Seahawks, I think it was a Kyren 70-30 split. They just prefer to use him.
Yeah.
Like he's McVay's boy, and if like a bet that I'm probably going to make right now is Kyren over 13.5 rush attempts. It doesn't mean that it's a good fantasy play though.
Yeah, and it's been since week 9, it's been about a 60-40 split of favoring Kyren. And I until the lines adjust, I do like Corum's over. I think 38.5. He only had 10 rushing yards on 8 attempts against Seattle last time. And that's, I think, mainly because they like to work Corum on man duo. They don't use him a ton on that outside zone stuff, which is where Kyren kind of beat him a decent amount in the first matchup. And so that, I'm tempted just because it's at 38.5 and Corum's averaging, 61 yards the last since week 9. He's averaging 61 yards a game and he averages 6 yards a carry. And it's one of those where, I don't know if Seattle can hem him in as well as they did the first matchup, but it is tough because Seattle's one of the best run defenses in the game. And so I will probably take Corum's over, but I don't know if I necessarily will recommend that, but I'm going to take it.
No, that's a good call. The one other angle that I see, we talked about it. We talked about how Terrence Ferguson might be key in this game. Not every single sportsbook right now has receiving yards lines for that because it's not official that Davante Adams is out. So I think they're kind of leaving room for a situation where he does play.
Yeah.
But I am seeing some lines for him on like BetMGM. I see it on Underdog. See it on Prize Picks. Like there are places where his line is out, where lines are out for other players. And the one that I like the most is Terrence Ferguson. It's 17.5 on some places and 16.5 on other places. Obviously, take the lower one if you can, especially if the odds are like close. But I think the over on 17.5 for Terrence Ferguson. We just talked about the playing time increase. It correlated pretty well with the fact that Davante Adams missed part of that game as well. I don't think it's a mistake. Like I think that they want to ramp this up for him, especially with Higbee still out. I think there's opportunity for him to run 60% of the routes again. I know he was 70% last week. And it could be a situation where that's 1 or 2 catches for him where he's the guy that's open and they hit him and that's you hit your bet. So I really like that angle for him.
Yeah, I do too. I think that we showed in a couple of the clips, they'll work him into the slot out of 12 personnel. If they go if they go a little bit heavier, they'll work him outside. They'll even go 3 tight ends and they'll go trips with like an attached tight end on the opposite side on a 3-by-1. And so just his versatility and where he can line up, I think is super valuable. And you can kind of see that his route running is getting better. He's getting better at winning in the short area. And like last week against the Lions, they do like to try to work him on, out and up type stuff and try to find a hole or a gap in the defense where they're focused on a Puka or Davante Adams and they can work him into empty spaces. And so I really do like the Ferguson, line at 17.5.
Yeah, and the fantasy points projections actually agree too. So he's the projections have him at 26.1 yards. So that's enough clearance with the vig and everything baked in that you should be making money if you get. And they haven't projected for 1.5 receptions. So again, 2 receptions will get it. 1 could actually get it by itself too. All right, we went through the whole gamut. Any other things that you want to talk about for the Rams? Was there anything that we missed?
No, it'll be exciting to see how this offense continues to work because they do game plan pretty specifically for the defense that they play. And so like next week they get Atlanta. I think that'll be an intriguing matchup where I think they'll probably go a little bit heavier and they'll lean into their heavy personnel because I think that they have better matchups with heavier personnel against Atlanta, even though they will go a little bit lighter. And then against Arizona, that was one of the weeks they worked that their heavier 13 personnel. I think they'll do that again. And that's probably a Corum and Kyren Williams week. And so it'll be, I think every week it kind of, from here on out, it kind of changes who is the big guy with like Puka and or Davante Adams just being an eternal, an eternal spring of points.
Yeah. My personal prediction for the game, I told you this pre-show, I think that Seattle's going to win. For some reason, I just have this feeling. The first game was really close. Seattle was down a decent amount, and they came back, and they were able to kind of make it close and had an opportunity to win the game at the end of the game. Didn't work out. I feel like people are really counting Seattle out just because Darnold's looked pretty trashy lately, and they have like no run game.
Yeah.
But I do think they're a little bit of a different team at home, and that their defense is so legit that it can carry teams. And we've seen teams like that operate so well and end up actually winning Super Bowls as long as they have like an average, competent like not quarterback, offense. And for me, like I still think that there's opportunity for them to win this game and win their division, and then the last two games of the season for the Seahawks are not cakewalks by any means, but I still think they would be favored to win both of those games. They're playing the Panthers and they're playing the 49ers. They might not be favored to play win the 49ers game on the road. But I've been doing playoff best ball stuff, and I talked about it last week. I think it's underrated that they can get the 1 seed. If they win this game, they would be favored to get the 1 seed in the NFC. And I think they're going to do it. As much as everybody talks about the Rams being the class of like the NFC and like the best team, I do think the Rams are the best team. I just don't think that football always makes sense that the best team ends up getting the 1 seed. Like they just so happen to have the same record. They're playing each other this week. They're playing in Seattle this time. I think Seattle might win the division and win the 1 seed in the NFC.
And I'm going to go the opposite way. I think the Rams win. I think the Rams have got Sam Darnold's number. And I just think that in a game where it's going to come down to the offense is needing to make a play, because I think it'll be like a 17-13, 17-14, like lower scoring affair. I think that Stafford is hitting an absolute stride. I think their offense is hitting a stride. I think McVay has dug into his bag, and I trust the Rams offense to make a play when it counts, more so than I think Seattle is. So I'm going to go against you. And I think Rams secure the 1 seed. I think that they ride that into the playoffs. And I think the Rams win right now. I think the Rams win the Super Bowl, barring something crazy happening. Even without Davante Adams, I think that the way that McVay is so much in his bag, it just puts so much stress on defenses. And I just trust Stafford to make a play more than I trust Sam Darnold. So it'll be
the hard part.
It's going to be a fun game, but yeah, I think the Rams pull it off.
The weakness for the Rams, I think, is their secondary. But I'm not capitulating. Like I still think the Seahawks win this game, and I don't think that it has to necessarily make a ton of sense as to why they win the game. Like I don't think that they're the better team, but I do think they're going to win this game. The secondary is something that you can attack for the Rams. The hard part is if you don't have the offensive line to like keep the pass rush at bay, then you can easily that can make up for the secondary. The Seahawks don't have the offensive line, so that's going to have some issue in this game as well. But I feel like the Seahawks is just going to play like a possession based game and try. They've leaned on Jason Myers to make like 50-yard field goals to basically win games. Last week, I think he had like 4 or 5 of them. So
I think he was their only point scorer last week.
Yeah, exactly. So part of me just kind of thinks that the way that they end up winning this game is through another like 4 or 5 field goal type of game, and that's what ends up happening. And the way that the Rams end up losing this season, if they do end up losing, I don't see a really good path for them to lose in the NFC, but I could see a team like I could see the Broncos give them issues. I don't love the Broncos either. Like I don't think they're an incredible team by any means. Like they have a great defense. It's not Texans level elite, but it's really good.
Yeah.
But I think that their offensive line is good enough to keep the pass rush at bay from the Rams, in which case, and they have enough like mixed bags of receivers that are like sneakily pretty good. Like I like Pat Bryant. Everyone on Twitter knows that I love Troy Franklin a lot. And that, I brought him up earlier too, but I love Troy Franklin. I think he's really good. And Cortland Sutton also has his role, and the way that they just mix and match, like who kind of plays in different elements of the game. I could see a situation where the Broncos are able to beat them if they make it to the Super Bowl. I don't think that the Patriots can do it. I don't necessarily like maybe the Bills too, but I mean those are maybe the only two teams I think in the NFL that would have a pretty good shot at beating them. And I think it has to be in the Super Bowl.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think if they saw the Lions again, it'd be a fun game. Seattle, I think that they'd be able to pull it off against San Fran. I think San Fran's lack of pressure is what would crater them against Stafford, because that's what you kind of saw last week, is that the Lions couldn't generate enough pressure. And if Stafford has his clean pocket, he's gonna work your defense to death. And that was what Seattle did really well last time, is they got a good amount of pressure on Stafford. They pulled him off of his spot and they forced him into some tougher throws, and he wasn't able to step up into the pocket. And so that is where their interior defensive line is able to push the pocket really well and create, some sticky situations for Stafford. But yeah, I think
I would have given the Packers.
Yeah,
I would have given the Packers a chance before the Micah Parsons injury. And we literally just got the final notification that he's on injured reserve. I think we all knew it, but now it's like official.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would have given the Packers a chance, but no, and the Eagles look like trash. I don't really actually trust the Bears defense. Like, they're opportunistic and they get a ton of turnovers, but on a possession where they don't get a turnover, it's usually a touchdown. So
yeah. Yeah, it's going to be a fun finish. I mean, the NFC is crazy, but I really think the Rams have kind of figured it out and hit their stride. But I don't know. We'll see Thursday night. It's going to be a fun game. It's going to be kind of a messy game with rain and wind, but that's where, again, I think that the Rams can play that messy game and Sam Darnold can't.
I feel like, you correct me if I'm wrong, they had a messy game against Philly in the playoffs last year and almost pulled it off. It was like,
yeah,
I actually thought that they were going to come back and win the game. They had the last possession opportunity, and Jalen Carter makes this incredible move on the center and sacks Stafford, or deflects. I don't remember exactly what happened. I think it was a sack.
Yeah.
But it was like, if he didn't get in his face, that was going to be a touchdown or close to it. And that was last year without Davante Adams. I think they're a better team this year. So yeah, I mean, Super Bowl favorites. And I think that that's probably correct, but there are opportunities for them to lose, but maybe not in the NFC this year, probably in the Super Bowl. We talked a lot about the Rams. We covered pretty much every angle that we could possibly see. We think that we've got the MVP candidate on the team. Their run game looks really nice. Puka is playing at an insane level with his yak abilities, the way that they deploy him. Davante Adams adds an extra element to the offense. There's so much here with this team. Again, just to kind of break it down for you guys, we still have a couple more games for you guys that we're going to cover the rest of the season, because we got a couple weeks left. And if you guys enjoy this content, make sure you're subscribing, liking, sharing it with friends, etc. We're doing this just as us two. This isn't necessarily associated to anything just yet, but we really appreciate all the people that are subscribing and watching or listening on a regular basis. If you're not already following Steve, make sure you follow him at callmesteve07. Myself at Denani Zain. We love this stuff. Thanks for watching. Appreciate it. Take care, guys.